Over the course of this school year, we have been focusing on how we can develop our English language learners' ability to use academic language and engage in academic discourse. We started by looking at Swirl and how we can incorporate speaking and writing, reading, and listening into every lesson. We then considered the types of sentence frames that we could use to support our students to speak and write in complete sentences. Then we looked at different routines and protocols that we could incorporate into our lessons so that students could participate in extended conversations. This month, we're going to examine language functions, the reasons why we use academic language. We will also look at how we can use language functions to develop our students' academic language. Usually when we think about academic language, we think of vocabulary, academic vocabulary, and content vocabulary. Academic vocabulary refers to those general terms that cut across all content areas. Words like compare, analyze, determine, infer. These are present in every classroom, math, science, English language arts, in every grade level. Academic vocabulary terms often represent the thinking skills of what our students need to know how to do. On the other hand, content vocabulary refers to those terms that are specific to a particular discipline, such as circumference, function, and exponent. Content vocabulary terms are often the very concepts that our students need to know. There is a common analogy of academic language and discourse being like a well-constructed brick wall. In this analogy, content vocabulary terms are so important that they are referred to as the bricks that make up the wall. Academic vocabulary terms, however, serve a different purpose. They are referred to as the mortar that holds the bricks in place because they help provide context and show relationship between content vocabulary concepts. But vocabulary is only one aspect of academic language that students need to master if they are to successfully engage in their learning. The three aspects of academic language we're going to consider are all connected to each other: language function, phrases, and structure. The first is language functions. Language functions are the ways we use language when performing academic tasks. For example, when we compare important ideas, we're using the language function of compare and contrast. We're focusing on 6 language functions this year. In addition to compare and contrast, they are making a claim and providing evidence, sequencing, describing and explaining, identifying problems and solutions, and cause and effect. Each of these language functions has both specific phrases and structures associated with them. For example, phrases such as "one reason" and "I would argue that" are associated with the language function of making a claim and providing evidence. They signal a shift of ideas or to indicate important relationships. Students rely on them to make meaning from complex texts or presentations. Students also use them to effectively organize and communicate their thinking for others. In terms of structure, it is common to expect that a claim would be presented first, followed by a piece of evidence, and then finished by a statement that explains the significance that that evidence has on the claim. Likewise, all the other language functions have a structure to them that can be visually represented as a graphic organizer. These 3 aspects of academic language, language functions, associated phrases, and inherent structures, are important for ELLs as they develop their academic language. First of all, when ELLs have an understanding of how a presentation or a text will be organized, and they're familiar with the phrases that signal the transition of ideas, they are more likely to be able to understand the content concepts. This goes back to the earlier analogy in which we described content-specific vocabulary as being like bricks. They represent the concepts being learned and discussed. The general academic language and the language function phrases help to signal to students how the content vocabulary terms, the bricks, are related to each other and to the big picture of the topic. Just like mortar, they help connect those bricks. In order to effectively develop academic language, ELL students need both the bricks and the mortar holding those bricks together. Let's see what this looks like in action as we're planning with standards. For our example, we're going to use a standard from the ELA and Literacy Framework. By the end of second grade, students are expected to be able to describe the connection between a series of historical events, scientific ideas or concepts, mathematical ideas or concepts, or steps in technical procedures in a text. We know that with the backward design process for lesson planning, that we begin by determining the learning targets. We do this by analyzing the curriculum standards, unpacking them so that we can reveal the concepts and the skills embedded within them. We want to determine what the students need to know and be able to do. The know part signals the concepts that students need to own. The nouns and the noun phrases from the standard indicate what those concepts are that the students need to own. The be able to part refers to the skills the students need to acquire. These are most likely wrapped up in the verbs of the standard. As we unwrap the verbs, we begin to see the skills the students need to master. In terms of concepts, what the students need to know, this standard identifies 4 things: the connection between a series of historical events, the connection between scientific ideas and concepts, the connection between mathematical ideas and concepts, and steps and technical procedures. In terms of skills, what the students need to be able to do, this standard is not as clear and needs to be unwrapped further. This standard uses the verb describe. However, when the word describe is applied to the identified concepts, there are different language functions that emerge. Describing the connection between a series of events may mean showing how one event caused a second event, the cause and effect language function. It may mean sequencing those events in chronological order, the sequencing language function. It may mean showing how these events are similar to or different from each other, the compare and contrast language function. Discovering the different language functions is critical to our planning because it opens the doors to the types of language we need to explicitly teach our students and the linguistic supports that we need to provide. The other benefit to language functions is that they cut across all content areas. Students can compare and contrast in science, math, social studies, ELA, art, music, any and all content areas. As you watch this video clip, identify the language function or functions that frame the lesson. Analyze how the teacher is supporting students by making the structure of the language function explicit for them. Also, identify examples of both the bricks, the content vocabulary, and the mortar, the general academic vocabulary and transitional phrases.
You're going to tell me whether you agree or disagree on the idea that the water went through the ground to the town. I know this because, and you're going to tell me what evidence do you have to support that idea.
When you're making an evidence-based argument, you are rallying evidence from multiple sources. And this is an important skill for students to have, not just in science, but in social studies and literacy and mathematics.
So we've been investigating the town of Moncton, and we've been wondering and investigating the question, what caused the town to flood?
In this video, you'll see students weighing ideas and evaluating evidence. They're going to be looking at multiple forms of evidence across an entire unit.
In our investigations, we now know that this mountain is made out of
rock, sand, and soil.
pebbles,
Glacier moraine.
sand, and soil, right? It's meaningful for students because they have these activities that are connected to a phenomena, using the activities and readings and texts and a variety of different pieces of evidence, even their own personal experiences in the natural world, and trying to make sense of that phenomena. Students used different color stickies to show the different types of evidence. We started with drawing our initial models and talking about our own ideas and personal experiences about what we think caused the town to flood. And we came up with 3 ideas. We have 3 claims. One where it filled up behind, We have another one where the water went through the ground. And our third claim was that the water made a new path. And we've been using these to help us make some sense while we're collecting evidence on whether we agree or disagree with these ideas. At the beginning, we really focused on students using their own personal experience as a way to support or disprove the claims that were being created.
So me and Andrew were using those tools and we pushed the water off the concrete, and so then it soaked inside the soil. I'm thinking it should go right here.
Can you explain why?
Well, because if it wouldn't agree, it went in the new path. It's not, because it says on top of the ground, not basically like under the ground.
So that's evidence to support that it didn't go on top of the ground, that it went under the ground. And then as students built their knowledge, they started using other pieces of evidence in the experiments that they've done, the videos that we were watching, the texts that we were reading.
That was red.
Students were able to go to other pieces of evidence to help support this text and what was meant by easily. Students were going to the experiment that we had done to talk about the earth materials and whether the water flow was easily went through or not. And so that was an opportunity for students to add on, clarify with those ideas.
We put rock, sand, and soil all in one cup, and we timed that one. Yes, and so that could help you clarify the statement. It didn't take as long as clay because clay took a pretty long time, but it still went pretty slow through the glacier moraine. I agree with that. I'm pretty sure this one does go and agree.
As a science community, if we're building our ideas and our arguments, having sources from a variety of different types of evidence would create a stronger claim. So you're going to go back to yesterday's work and be thinking about some of the evidence that you collected. It's important that you have one color or lots of colors?
Lots of colors.
Lots of colors to support that claim to make it stronger.
The sources of evidence could just be kids naming, this wasn't a personal experience, this was from an experiment. But rather than that, we're diving into the particulars of what did we learn from that personal experience and how does that sit up close? How do we juxtapose that to what we saw happen in an experiment? So it's in the weighing of it and evaluating of ideas.
Evidence is like ideas from other things that can help support your claim, or it might be an experiment that you've done and you figured out the answer to the question and to support that claim.
I want to thank you for sharing and taking a stand today, and we'll continue thinking more, yes, and we'll continue thinking more about what's causing this.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do, a think and write. My advice for teachers who would like for their students to write in math class is allow students to have multiple opportunities to practice. Thumbs up when you have yesterday's materials. I have supports in my classroom such as lots of sentence frames. Using this sentence frame, turn and talk to your partner. They have a word bank on their whiteboard, on the wall, so there's a lot of vocabulary that they can access. What is another word for pattern? How about an academic word? Marcia.
Another word is constant ratio.
Constant ratio. When I say go, you're going to turn and talk to your partner. Another support is for lots of oral interaction.
I just said that in the first day, the number of people only know 4 person.
This is a very important piece of my teaching because this is a way for me to check for understanding when I see them interact. Tell me in a paragraph, using sequencing words and mathematical vocabulary, what did you do? Through this, students are able to have a starting point whenever they speak or whenever they write, and it's something to celebrate. I really like how you expanded this. This is very good.
Nasrin is good at learning and write.
Students in my class are all newcomers. They come from different countries, from South America and Central America. They bring a vast amount of pragmatic knowledge to the classroom. They come from very closely knit communities where their roles were clearly defined. Many of them speak indigenous languages.
This is for the Emmanuel, but Nazarene.
However, all of them have limited or interrupted schooling. In Spanish, their reading level range from being new to print to 3rd, 4th grade. Today we're going to compare and contrast. Compare and contrast is one of our targets, one of our goals. We have to compare and contrast characters, and then we need to explain using transition words to connect ideas. Okay? So we're going to use our language structures. All right? So we have the strength for Nazreen, the strength for Emmanuel. When I model, I want to show my students the thinking that has to go in their head in order to complete a task. So I show them, I verbalize what I think about as I'm doing this. And at the same time, I need to show them what resources to use. Nazreen is good at going to school, but Emmanuel is good at riding a bike.
When planning this lesson, Katja and I decided to focus on compare and contrast. Identifying similarities and differences or finding connections is really at the heart of learning and building new knowledge. So we want to empower our students to take the ability to identify something similar among two characters and bring that with them as they leave the Bridges classroom.
Nazarene, so Nazarene and Emmanuel
About
is intelligent,
yeah.
I think.
Yes.
Good. All right.
Independent practice is very important. We want our students to be independent. It empowers them. It gives them opportunity to practice, to give it a go at whatever they were practicing together in pairs or in groups.
Writing, both. Emmanuel wants to show everyone. Nazarene decides to go to separate school, but Emmanuel's running is big across Ghana.
Nazarene is good at learning and to go to school, but Emmanuel is good at ride a bicycle.